Kenneth Okonkwo boldly confront Nyesom Wike over his controversial remarks. I am not an Igbo man. Kenneth Okonkwo expressed gratitude to God for making him Igbo, emphasizing the resilience, creativity, and achievements of the Igbo people. Kenneth Okonkwo addressed the FCT minister Nyesom Wike, who denied being Igbo, calling it amusing and contradictory given Wike's actions and ancestry. He highlighted instances where Wike broke his vows, such as pledging to support the PDP presidential candidate, but later acting contrary to his promises. He argued that nationhood and identity are often defined by language, referencing biblical stories like the Tower of Babel to support this. Despite Wike's denial, Kenneth Okonkwo affirmed that Wike is Igbo by tribe and language, suggesting Wike's refusal is a matter of personal choice rather than factual accuracy. He acknowledged Wike's fundamental right to not identify as Igbo, but maintained that this does not change his ethnic roots. He praised the Igbo for their ability to thrive post-Civil War, creating wealth and industries like Nollywood without relying on government assistance. Kenneth Okonkwo noted that Nigeria thrived most when the Igbo were in leadership positions across sectors before the Civil War. He described the Igbo as naturally inclusive and welcoming, emphasizing their openness to integrating anyone, even those who distance themselves from the group. Kenneth Okonkwo expressed confidence that Wike might eventually embrace his Igbo identity, urging patience from those critical of Wike's stance. You know, sometimes life gives us moments where we're forced to think about who we really are, where we come from, and what we stand for. It's those moments when we truly reflect on our identity. And that's exactly what happened recently with an interesting and controversial statement made by Nyesom Wike, the current Federal Capital Territory Minister of Nigeria. Wike made headlines when he publicly declared that he was not an Igbo man, a comment that stirred up a lot of discussions and left people scratching their heads. It was a bold and unexpected statement from someone whose actions, background, and even language seemed to tell a completely different story. So here we are, talking about the response to Wike's remark, which came from someone who is not just a public figure, but also a well-respected individual in Nigerian society, Kenneth Okonkwo. Kenneth is not just an actor. He's someone who has always been outspoken about his pride in his Igbo roots, his heritage, and the resilience of the Igbo people. So when Wike, in what seemed like a casual remark, denied his Igbo identity, Kenneth Okonkwo decided it was time to speak out. In his response, Kenneth was unapologetically direct and passionate about his stance. He didn't just let it slide. He addressed the situation head-on, and in doing so, he managed to take us all on a journey through history, identity, and what it truly means to belong to a people, to a tribe, to a community. Kenneth Okonkwo's response was one of gratitude and reflection. You see, Kenneth has always spoken with pride about being Igbo. In fact, he often takes time to thank God for making him Igbo, something he has never hidden. He speaks about the Igbo people with such admiration, always pointing out their incredible resilience, creativity, and ability to thrive, even when the odds are stacked against them. For him, being Igbo is not just a matter of where he was born or what language he speaks. It's about the spirit of the people, their strength, and the unbreakable bond they share. Now let's take a step back for a moment. You may be wondering, what exactly did Nyesom Wike say that prompted this bold reaction from Kenneth Okonkwo? Well, Wike's statement was simple but startling. During a public event, Wike declared, "I am not an Igbo man." To many people, this was surprising and frankly puzzling. After all, Wike has been in the public eye for years. He's held various political positions and has represented the people of the Rivers State and, more recently, the Federal Capital Territory. Yet, despite all of this, His statement seemed to reject something fundamental about who he is, where he comes from, and his roots. Kenneth Okonkwo's reaction was swift, and it was clear that he felt a sense of personal responsibility to address Wike's comment. In a public statement, Kenneth didn't just defend his own identity as an Igbo man. He took the opportunity to talk about what it means to be Igbo and why Wike's words were so troubling to him. But Kenneth didn't stop at just defending himself. He took a step further, pointing out what he believed was the contradiction in Wike's words. He reminded the public of the many promises Wike had made throughout his political career, promises he later went back on. One of the most notable was during the presidential primaries of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, when Wike made a vow. He had sworn to support the candidate who emerged from the primaries, regardless of who it was. He made this vow publicly with full commitment. However, after the primaries, Wike's actions didn't align with his words. He went on to act in a way that contradicted the very promises he made. This, to Kenneth, showed a pattern of someone who couldn't be trusted to hold firm to his commitments, and he used this example to highlight what he saw as the hypocrisy in Wike's recent comment about not being Igbo. But Kenneth didn't just focus on politics and broken promises. He took a step back and looked at the bigger picture, at the issue of identity itself. For Kenneth, the question of whether or not Wike is Igbo goes beyond politics. It goes to the core of what it means to belong to a group, to a tribe, and to a people. Kenneth brought up a point that was both simple and profound. Nobody gets to choose where they come from. Where you are born, the tribe you belong to, and the language you speak are things that are determined for you long before you have any say in the matter. Kenneth pointed to the ancient story of the Tower of Babel, a story from the Bible that talks about how God scattered the people of the earth by confusing their languages. According to Kenneth, the story illustrates how language is the foundation of nationhood and identity. If you speak a certain language, that language defines you as part of a group, regardless of your personal feelings about it. And here's where it got really interesting. Kenneth pointed out that Wike, for all his claims of not being Igbo, speaks Igbo. The language of the Igbo people is something Wike cannot escape, even if he chooses not to acknowledge it. By virtue of his language, his tribe, and his ancestry, Kenneth argued that Wike is, in fact, Igbo. Of course, Kenneth acknowledged that Wike has every right to reject his Igbo identity if that's what he chooses to do. Of course, Kenneth acknowledged that Wike has every right to reject his Igbo identity if that's what he chooses to do. That's his personal right, after all. But Kenneth was firm in his belief that no matter what Wike says, his roots are undeniably Igbo. But this wasn't just about Kenneth defending his own identity. This was also about the larger significance of the Igbo people and their place in Nigerian history. Kenneth took a moment to remind everyone of the incredible resilience of the Igbo people. He spoke about the horrors of the Nigerian Civil War and how, despite losing so much, homes, businesses, and lives, the Igbo people managed to bounce back. Within just a few years after the war, the Igbo had rebuilt their communities and had begun to thrive again. They didn't rely on government handouts. Instead, they used their creativity, resourcefulness, and hard work to carve out a place for themselves in the world. Kenneth made sure to highlight how the Igbo people are known for their ability to innovate. He mentioned the rise of Nollywood, the Nigerian film industry, which was started by Igbo people. In fact, one of the most significant films to come out of Nollywood, Living in Bondage, was created by Igbo filmmakers. Kenneth was proud of this. He pointed out that the Igbo people didn't just survive. They created, they innovated, and they built industries that have made a global impact. Nollywood is now one of the largest film industries in the world, and it all started in Nigeria, thanks to the ingenuity of the Igbo people. But perhaps what Kenneth was most proud of was the fact that the Igbo people had never been afraid of change. They had always been adaptable, always open to new ideas and ways of thinking. Kenneth emphasized that the Igbo people are not a group that lives in isolation. Instead, they are natural traders, travelers, and connectors. This is why, in his view, the Igbo are not a group that would reject someone simply because they don't share the same background. They are by nature inclusive. Kenneth joked that even if someone who had once distanced themselves from the Igbo community came back and wanted to identify as Igbo, they would be welcomed with open arms. That's just how the Igbo are. They believe in unity, growth, and acceptance. But despite all the praise and pride Kenneth had for his people, he wasn't angry with Wike. In fact, he was patient. Kenneth understood that people go through phases, and sometimes people have their own reasons for rejecting their roots. Maybe Wike's decision not to identify as Igbo was politically motivated. Maybe it was a personal choice. Whatever the reason, Kenneth made it clear that Wike had every right to make his own decision about how he identifies. But at the same time, Kenneth was confident that in time, Wike might come to accept and embrace his Igbo identity. After all, as Kenneth put it, the Igbo people are inclusive. They welcome everyone. Kenneth concluded by returning to where he started: gratitude. He thanked God for making him Igbo, for giving him the strength and creativity to overcome challenges. He pointed out that the Igbo people, time and time again, have shown that they can survive without relying on the government. They have created industries, built communities, and thrived in ways that others could only dream of.
FCT Minister Confronts Wike denying his Igbo ancestry.
Well, you see, the issue of the FCT minister denying his Igbo ancestry is actually very amusing. I've seen the FCT minister, for instance, raising his hand and vowing during the presidential primary of PDP that whoever emerges from this primary as the presidential candidate, that I vow to support the person. He later on supported Tinubu in the presidential election after the vow. And he started saying, no, it's because he's from the south. And then I was asking myself then, when you were making the vow, were you not aware that you had some northern candidates that were contesting? You contested with them. When you were making the vow, did you say, I vow that if any southern candidate emerged from this convention, I'm going to support the southern candidate? Is it, if any person, if anybody emerges, I vow, use the word vow, to support the person? I saw him also vowing he will never say anything against Odeli that will make him to cry. But the things he's saying about Odeli is even making Odeli's followers to scream. Then you can imagine Odeli himself. I saw him also vow that once he leaves office, he will leave his successor to have peace and will not come to disturb him. That is not the kind of person that disturbs his successor. His successor is the most disturbed successor in the whole Nigeria. So he has made a lot of vows which he had recanted. So if you don't like what the FCT minister is saying, just be patient. He will soon change. But let me talk about the issue of ancestry. Nobody chooses where he comes from. It's God that determines where you come from. That is one. Then secondly, the basis of nationhood from the ancient time is language. If you recall the Bible from the Tower of Babel, when God wanted to create nations out of the unipolar world, then he said, let us go and scatter their language. So when God did it, you discover that people now who understood each other, what they were speaking, now aggregated and became part of one nation. So it is language that determines your nationhood. Ikwere is Igbo, 100%. Ikwere go na Chineke dị mma. Ikwere. Wike means Wike, because in Igbo land, some dialects use the word Wike. If you remember, the former Senate president is Adolphus Wagbara. So it's dialectical. Nyesom is Igbo. So by virtue of language, Ikwere is Igbo. And it is in his constitutional right to say he does not want to identify as Igbo. That's his constitutional right. But he cannot say he's not Igbo. Because by language, by tribe, he is Igbo and he doesn't have a choice about it. And again, if Enwike, that is just a politician, talks about Igbo, and the president of Ohanese, who happens to be an Ikwere man, Senator Azoka Mbata, talks on what concerns Igbo, and then Wike's own political leader, who is Fubara, because the PDP concern is very clear. Once somebody is a governor, he is the leader of the state. If Fubara had welcomed Senator Azoka Mbata as the president of Ohanese, who is from Ikwere, I would rather believe these people, because they have the political and cultural right to say where Ikwere people are from. And then from their language, Azoka, the back is strong. It is pure Igbo. However, like I said, it is a man who has complex that is even making his nationality an issue. I tell you something. At times, I go to church to give thanks to God for the honor and privilege of making me an Igbo man. You know why? Ndị Igbo are one of the rare gem in the whole world that can create their way out of any problem they are in. After the war, they were given 20 pounds. Before 10 years after the war, they are already the richest wherever they are, adding value, creativity. 22 years after the war, we were already creating living in bondage in Igbo, somewhere in Lagos, that has started in Nollywood, that is ranking about the second now in the whole world. Creativity, which is a gift from God. Before the war, we always hear about Igbo man. An Igbo man will sit down, and whenever he has any issue, he creates his way out of the problem. Do you know that since the Igbos were purged out of the civil service of Nigeria, out of the leadership from the highest quarters, Nigeria has never recovered from it? The best time of Nigeria was before the Civil War. And then the Igbos were in charge of practically majority of the sectors in Nigeria. So what I'm telling you is that I thank God. I always ask God, what have I done for you to give me the privilege to be an Igbo man? And you can see it, because he has given me all the faculties, mental and physical, to survive without governmental assistance. Pure creativity. So Ndi Igbo are not looking for people to be Ndi Igbo. Ndi Igbo are already grateful to God that they are made to be Ndi Igbo. Ikwere people are the ones who rightly identified themselves as Igbo, rightly indicated interest to be president of Ohanese, and Ndi Igbo from the southeast, knowing that they are our brothers. One thing you can't find in the DNA of an Igbo man is segregation. No, because by nature he's a traveler, he is a trader, and these two natural traits demand that you welcome everybody from wherever they come from. I'm sure that even if Yoruba and Hausa want to say they have become Igbo tomorrow, Igbos will still accept them and all of us will be one. That is just it. So when you say Wike is saying, don't be surprised if you go to him privately, with his voice. When you're walking about Igbo, you can't believe Igbo, you can't blow Igbo. You're happy here politics. You want to know your politics. You can't blow Igbo. Happy here. You'll be surprised, that's what he will say. So Wike is Igbo, or let me say Ikwere is Igbo, but Wike has the right, just like he has done before, to say he does not want to identify as Igbo. That's his fundamental human right. But if you don't like it, just be patient. He will soon change.
This is the end of our news update. Please click the icon on the top right corner of your screen to watch my next video. You will enjoy it. I will see you again in my next update. Enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye for now.